Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in this evening. Let me just share my screen. Thanks for joining me. I am wearing a very nice present for my wife tonight, and I slank it because these gas prices are killing us all. So I'm going to try and keep warm however I can. The boss is in the house. Yeah, she's downstairs. Um, I have decided I was going to give JetBrains Space a try for managing this project. Kind of cool, kind of fun. Um, I don't know what I can do with it yet, but we'll see. I'm on a free plan. I've created a project. I've connected a repo. I've started adding some documentation. I can start looking at code reviews and all sorts of fun stuff on here. And I can start working on some tasks. So as you can see, this is what it's going to look like. Can we zoom? Oh, we can zoom. Amazing. We've got authentication, teams, repositories, projects, collaborators, discussions, tasks, check-ins, servers, cycles, and sites. Whew, a lot to say there. So, let's go authentication. So, as a user, I must be able to log in and register using GitHub so that I can access the system, and it will sync with GitHub using my access token on sign-in. Something pretty simple. So, obviously, using Laravel, Socialite makes a lot of sense. I've already done a little bit of this. I wanted to make sure that I knew what I was doing for a change. Um, it doesn't happen very often. So what I've done, I've actually changed this at the minute to not logged in. And if I go to OAuth GitHub login, it'll redirect me back and it will tell me that I am logged in, which is great. So I've created a fake UI. And this is what I've got so far. We've got the UI components that we created. We've got these project cards here. Our team switcher here, which is basically exactly similar to what you have on Laravel Jetstream. And obviously I can sign out and it actually signs me out now. So this won't sign out because yeah, it wasn't logged in. So what we've got, let me JetBrains space. 2 seconds, my wife is calling. Hello?
Has your stream stopped?
No?
Oh, it's from my phone then. It's stopped on my phone. So I
Um,
didn't know if it was just my phone or your actual stream. I just got his phone in case it
no.
freezes.
It's still live,
Okay.
don't worry.
Okay. Bye.
Thanks.
Bye everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Oh, my wife thought the stream had stopped. It happens. Internet in Wales isn't the most reliable. So this is what I'm using here. So JetBrains Space is relatively new. Um, it's pretty cool. Check it out. It's free to use. Um, and if you use PHP Storm, it makes a lot of sense, especially if you like your personal stuff as well. If you want to keep it away from anything to what you might be doing at work. So, okay, so let's focus. Here's our UI. So, as you can tell, it is a Tailwind UI. Super fancy. Does what it needs to. And that's about it. That's all I need right now. Because obviously the focus of this isn't the UI, it's about what you're going to be doing. So, hey, thanks for joining everybody. I just realised I've not said hi to everyone. Sorry, I'm getting lazy in my old age. So, what I've done so far, I did my usual, come down to my Composer autoloader and loaded in domains and infrastructure. Infrastructure are just, it's what I call all the contracts that I'm binding to for this specific application. Yeah, I could refactor and rename that to like Laracamp and it would make sense, but I've got Docker Compose running. I've just got your basic PHP app, Postgres, got Redis in case I want to be using cache, Mail Search in case I want to add some cool searching, and MailHog so that I can just catch emails really quickly. Nice and simple. Then in routes, nothing. My UI route. That's it. Nice and clean and simple. No models, no controllers. I've moved all of those over to the domain because I thought I'd have a bit of a play, really. That's the only real reason. I thought it would be fun to try. My main domain says OAuth, project server, team, and version control. So if I come back here and go to my documents, and if I switch this to view mode, what we've got is we've got users, and I'm using Snowflake IDs because I like them more than UIDs at the moment. So this is how I plan my projects. I start creating this README document, this Markdown document, adding in the data models using YAML because it's flexible enough and it allows me to. It allows me to find relationships, all attributes on that particular model itself, and what type that might be and what it might actually relate to. Then we've got teams, we've got repositories. So a repository is something that we're getting back from GitHub on login and synced on login. We've got projects. Now a project is relatively simple. It's got lots of different relationships there. We've got the owner because it belongs to the team, which repo that project belongs to, which servers this project is deployed on, what sites it is belonging to, although that servers might remove if we're going to say it has many sites. Collaborators, because you want to, because the way I'm going to do it is that you have a team and you can invite people to your team, no problems. That's kind of relatively normal behavior, but what I want to do is add collaborators into projects so that just because you have a team doesn't mean that you see all 30, 40 projects. You might just see that you'll see just the ones that you're a collaborator on. Cycles, so that as a team you can define your cycles. So you can say this is my sprint cycle, this is a next sprint cycle, and then obviously each project has many tasks. A site is where a project lives. Collaborator is another user who has access to the project through an invite. We have discussions on a project, so that it's always keeping contextual. The one thing that I didn't like about Basecamp is that discussions they felt very disconnected, and then everything was a discussion at the same time. It just, to me, it didn't work for my brain. So I'm going to build a one that does. Obviously, a task. We've got things like title, description, the status, complete, weight, the amount of effort it takes. So the way that I like to work, I don't timescale things. I score my tasks based on effort. Like if it's a 1-point task, it's going to take me not that long at all. But if it's a 5-point task, then it's going to take me a good few days. Issue number if it is being synced with GitHub, and then a pull request number in case this task is linked to a PR. Then obviously relations, it can have parent tasks, it can block other tasks, it can depend on other tasks, who reported it, who owns it, what cycle it belongs to, and what project it belongs to. So it feels a lot more project managey than what Basecamp gives me, but it's still aiming at that basic side as well. And then project check-ins. That's one thing I really liked about Basecamp is the check-in feature. So it's an asynchronous way to do stand-ups. Why sit for half an hour going around in a circle telling everyone what you're working on when you can do it asynchronously, right? Yeah, no, I completely agree with you, Nathan. Quoting in hours and minutes and then tracking all of that time is the bane of anybody's life. Track it in effort. How much effort did this take? Because you know how much effort equates to time for yourself. Then obviously there's a server. We've got the provider ID. You've got the PHP version, a database type, IP address. All of these things here are things relatable between Laravel Forge and Ploy. So what I'm going to be doing, I'm doing an integration with Laravel Forge and Ploy so that you can deploy servers. You connect your servers, you can have your sites connected through servers, and then you can trigger fast deploys. Not everybody's going to want this. Some people might. It's up to you. And a cycle is just a unit of time that a group of tasks belongs to. So, 2-week sprint cycle. Maybe you want to do a week sprint cycle. It's entirely up to you at that stage. But this is how I'm starting all of them. So we've got a user. I haven't added the forge and ploy token because I think these should probably be moved to the team and connected through the team. So what I'm going to do, and the reason I like using planning this way first, is that I can come down here and I can add them, and we're done. So all I need to do now is go change my team. It's simple. Right, so let's go to my models. So I was talking about team. I do have a team model already. It's only got a name and a user so far, so let's go and fix that based off of what we know we're going to need. Here's our teams table. So what we're going to want here is we're going to want a forge token and a ploy token. We're adding both just in case you use both, basically, right? Hey Chris, how you doing, buddy? So we're going to go for string. It is nullable. So we're going to add a forge token. Nope, wrong one. Table string nullable. And we're just going to add a ploy token. Now, if I was going to make something a little bit more dynamic, something that wasn't specifically for what I wanted to use, then I'd probably do this a little bit different. I'd probably have like a server provider and then have that server provider model or database table, and I would link through that one and say that a team has many server providers and connect it that way. But this is what I want it to be like. It's not perfect for every use case. You might think this is wrong, but for how I want this to work, this is designed to fit. And there's not Notion, it is JetBrains Space because I'm giving it a go. And what is the snowflake column? Let me show you. Composer JSON. These are all the packages that I've got running at the moment. Debug bar, ID helper, faker sale, Laracamp pest, Rove security advisories. We've got event sourcing in there just in case I need it. Dep track, although that technically should be a dev dependency. I'll fix that later. Here we go. Matt Kingshot, Snowflake. Here we go. A package to create Twitter Snowflake identifiers. Basically, they are a form of unique identifier, similar to other unique things like ULD, ULID, UUID, but it's consisting of dates. So it's also sortable. So it's cool. I'll show you an example in a moment. So if I come back to here quickly, users, for example, let's drop that. Okay, I need to fix what I'm doing on here. Here's a Snowflake ID, for example. The first part is a date stamp and the second part is a unique identifier. So that shows me that I need to fix something, which is great. So there's team. Let me go and get on with this part. So forge token and ploy token. That is fine. Then OAuth models user. I've got my user here. Here's my user model. It's got current team. It's got snowflakes again. They are castable. And what we also need to make sure we do now actually is snowflake cast, because that is going to link differently. So there is that. So what I've got at the moment is GitHub comes in, it goes to the login, it creates a new GitHub driver, and the reason I'm doing it like this and not just going like this like you usually would do is that on static analysis this comes back as mixed, so redirect is not an available method on mixed. So if I just show you that quickly, so sale PHP analyze. So that will take a second. So this bit's your kind of your basic socialite. Create a driver, and that's it. There you go. Access to undefined property, team. Oh, okay, I'll fix that in a minute. Cannot call method redirect on mixed. So here we go. But if we undo that, that resolves the issue. So there's that part doing it. It's complaining on the the user model quickly. Let me go have a look what it's doing. Line 65. Okay, it's complaining undefined property belongs to team user ID. Okay. I'm just going to ignore that one for now, and I probably don't need that, if I'm honest. Yeah, I don't need that. I don't know why I added it. So let's close those. So what's happening is GitHub comes back to this callback. We're pulling in our factory. Ooh. Invoke has no return type. Yeah, I will resolve that. So we're going to have a redirect response coming back and cannot called method user on mixed. And user is driver user. So what I need to do, I need to basically tell static analysis what this is. Well, what was it called? Abstract provider, my bad. And that should resolve that issue. So then we've got a driver, we get the user from that, then we get our command and we handle it by passing in the factory, passing the parts that we need. I mean, I can't really do much request validation here. It's coming back from GitHub. I could validate that request a little bit, but I'm relying on a socialite driver to pull parts out. So I'm just going to leave it as is because that works for me. So this command itself is bound to the container, my OAuth service provider. It's loading routes from this file here. This is specific routes for the OAuth domain. So we got OAuth GitHub login and callback, then OAuth logout. Nice and clean and nice and simple. Everything's pointing where we need it to. Then we've got our data objects. We've got a factory for creating our data objects, and we've got our command itself. So our command, this is going to complain. Yes, it is. So first create takes 2 arrays. So what we're going to want to do is go to this data object. I need to change these to public because I need to be able to access them from outside. That is good enough. So that when we get a user, we want to say we want to get where the GitHub ID is user ID or GitHub ID. And then the second array is user2array, which should solve that problem. First we'll create new value of is not matching the result parameter type, and it might introduce type related false positives. Yeah, I'm not too sure what to do there, but we'll have a play. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to sail artisan migrate fresh Should refresh my database. So if I go to users, I've got none, which is great. So now if I come back to my UI, which I'm going to organize back over here, log in. I have got one user. Let's go and log out and log back in. And let's see if that worked as I would have expected. Yes, it does. Perfect. I'm obviously going to write a test for this. It is something I would write a test around. But I'm coming back to tests in a bit. I wanted to try and just scaffold out a little bit to get a clear idea of direction. Because planning's great. Planning is fantastic. But sometimes plans don't work. So you need to do something about it. So here's our command. Here's our data object, for example. We've got a nice... I'm going to call it... I'm making them final classes because I don't want these to be extended. If these need to be extended or replaced, then you need to implement that and do a different implementation. I'm trying to be a little bit strict and different with this one. Same as I usually would, but also slightly different. So there is our contract here. So nice and clean. If you've seen any of my streams, you've probably seen a few of these things before. I register all of my domain service providers within config, and then if I need to, I can say this app. Oh. Is it this app? Register. There we go. You can add a separate service provider within there, and you can register your specific domain. Your domain-specific service providers within there. So it's nice and clean, nice and easy. So there's my domains. That's all of those. And if we just run a sale PHP depth track, just to make sure we're not killing any concerns. Nope. We haven't got any violations in our configured architecture, basically, which is great. It's always a good thing to use. So what we've got is we've got two paths available, app and source. We've got our app layer, which should be app anything. Then we've got our contract layer, which is basically anything within infrastructure. Technically, we don't need contracts in theory. Anything, however many levels deep within infrastructure, and from Laravel's perspective, Laravel will auto-illuminate any of those classes. So we got app is allowed Laravel and contract. Our contract is allowed Laravel only. And then we're pulling in our domain specifics. So if we go into source, domains, OAuth, depth track, for example. That should be similar. Yeah. So there we go. This is our specific path. OAuth. This is what I learned from a talk at Laracamp, and it really helped. We haven't really got contracts. Must class name. And we don't need that. Collectors, we got app. Account contract, that one. And there we go. So depth track. It's fun. I've only touched the surface of it, if I'm completely honest. There's probably a lot more powerful stuff you could do. Give it a try. That's all I can say. Ooh, 5 violations. No, these are all created manually. These depth track files based off of Okay, so I need to reconfigure this because I think I've screwed it up. I'm going to ignore deptrack for now. I definitely think I've screwed that up, and I will replay with those another time. Otherwise, I'm going to be here all day doing deptrack stuff. That's back to where it was, and I'll relook at it. So let's get back to the domain modeling and the data modeling. So we've got a team and we've got a user. So that's the first two sorted. Next, we're going to have a repository. So let's look at creating that one. So we'll make a model. We want a migration and a factory. Depth track. I'm pretty sure it's this one. Here we go. Feel free to check out this link and go figure out some more stuff about depth track. It goes into it in quite good detail. If I spoke about it on the stream, I would probably not have time to do anything else. So a repository is something domain-wise. This belongs to a team, is something owned by a team and used by a team. I would definitely say that a repository is something that needs to focus around a team. Domains, team models, refactor it to there, do that refactor, so that in my database migrations I can start working on this. So we're going to have, I haven't done the stubs yet, I always forget to do the stubs. Let's go grab some stubs. That should help. Stubs. Stubs are very useful. Create your own. If you can package them, or if your standard is similar to what others are, use theirs. It'll make your life so much easier. Right, so repositories. So we're going to have a table string for a name. Okay, be quiet, Google. Google's trying to talk to me now. So we're going to have a GitHub name, or owner, sorry. So this would be like, if it was a organization, it would be Laravel, or if it was personal, it would be like my own personal one, so that it matches. Mostly for API usage, I'm storing that one, to be honest. So then we've got the GitHub repo itself, like the end part of it, and that would be something like Laravel framework, or just Steve King, Laracamp, for example, which is what this one's called. And then we're going to have a Boolean flag to say whether it's personal or not, so that we know how to load this in, basically. So we're going to have a Boolean. We're going to default this to false. No, sorry, true. It's going to default to a personal repo, just because I think that makes a lot more sense to me. Because in the organization flow, in the repo flow, when you're authorizing an app in GitHub, it shows personal first and then it shows your teams. To me, it just makes sense. To my crazy old brain, it sounds right. Use snowflakes. Add this in here. We're also going to need to link in the owner for the team. So we need to say table foreign snowflake. Oh, what's it called? It's a shame this bit doesn't autocomplete, because that would make this package perfect. Foreign snowflake. I'm just going to grab that and copy it across. This would be team ID, which is great. That works. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to fill in my fillable fields while I'm here. So add my fillable fields, because I am definitely not team unguarded. So GitHub owner. We're going to add in our GitHub repo as well. We're going to add the Boolean personal and the team ID. I always add those relationships fields to fillable, because you never know which way you want to add these, and you don't want it to start throwing mass assignment just because somebody else does it differently to you. Thoroughness where possible. And this is an int string because it is. Casts. So we have got ID is a snowflake cast. We have got a team ID, which is a snowflake cast, and then we have got personal, which is a Boolean. And then if we're going to add types to this, it is going to be an array of string, or class string. Class strings and a string here. You're not telling it what the type is, you're telling it what it's casting, what the contents are. So next we're going to have a team. So public function team. This is going to be a belongs to. So we can return this belongs to, where the related is a team, and the foreign key is the team ID. Nice and quick and easy. So now that we've done that, we can come over to here and we can say that the public function repositories has many. A team has many. Return this has many. The related model is the repository. And the foreign key is the repository. Oh no, wait. Team ID. Almost did it wrong. And then I thought about what I was doing. Always happens. Always happens. So the only problem of moving your models to this directory is that you also have to add these sorts of things in there. So I have to add the repository factory into there. And we have to pull in that as well. So if you change the location of, if you move your model outside of the default app namespace, with the way that it looks up factories automatically for you, you have to add this. Always remember that, because it trips me up every single time. So speaking of factories, I can now go and work on this one. So now we can simplify this, add some declare strict types, add our model of repository, it's a class string. Yeah, the repository ID should be a snowflake. Here's a repository, has snowflakes. The ID is cast to a snowflake. We are good. So our definition, we need to get a name. So we'd say something like, I'm going to make this up. This faker, I'm going to get like words. We're going to go for 3 words as a sentence. We're going to get a vendor, and we're going to say this faker. We're going to get a company name like that. So what we do is, for the name, we can just get the name. That is the name itself. What we could probably do is surround this in a string slug. So we can say, oh, wrong way. Oh, we actually kind of want both, don't we? We want to string slug both. So we're going to have vendor slash name. That is the name, the package name. The GitHub owner is going to be the vendor. The GitHub repo is going to be the name. Personal, we're just going to fake a boolean. And then the team ID is just going to be get the team and get the factory. Yes, you are absolutely right there. So this needs to be just a snowflake. Pretty sure I need to add something extra to that. Yeah, snowflake primary. My first time using the package, so I keep forgetting these little parts to it. There we go. There's our repository factory. That is all of that. I don't think I've done anything in Cedars. No, I've got a team. Okay, we'll go for repository factory. Let's just try and see if this works. We'll seed while I have a drink. So we're good. That worked. So if I reload this, repositories, we've got some repositories, we've got some teams, and we've got some users. We are looking good so far. So all of that is working. I think you might want to also to slugify the vendor and name. I think I did. Vendor and name slugified. Should be fine. So where are we? Git status, git add all of that, and we're just going to quickly add that to a new commit. Repo modeling. Yeah, I think I'm going to have to do that. Now you mention it, Michael. Especially for this one. Let's go to my stubs. Let's go down to my... First off, the factory. This is going to fail constantly. I'm going to get rid of that. Then on the migration create, Snowflake primary, table foreign snowflake. Let's see what that is done like again so I can make sure it's correct. Here we go. So grab, copy, and keep that in there for if I need it for reference. Rather delete that than have to scratch my head every time. So there we go. That's going well. So we've got our repository. So now we need to look at the domain modeling. How are we going to actually model this on the domain? So to start with, we're going to need to say we do some factories. If I could spell today. Factories. We are also going to want some data objects. then these need to be replicated down here. Contracts can go. That can go. They can go in there though. Contracts can go, but they can go in there. And that is looking good. There we go. Just make some default directories, or namespaces, should I say. So, we know we're going to want a new data object for this. So we're going to want a repository data object contract. Stub model cast. Yeah, I really should do, shouldn't I? I thought I did. I haven't created a model since adding the stubs there, have I? So we'll check that. So public function to array is going to return an array. And this will return an array of string and mixed for now. So if I grab this, what I need is to create this data object itself. So this needs to implement this, which I can do shortly. So we can say public function construct. So we will quickly go back to the database migrations repository table, so we've got something for reference. Stick that over here. So when we create one, we're going to have a name, owner, repo, read-only, boolean, personal. It's not going to have a team. That's one thing it definitely won't have. So when we're casting this to an array, this is where we need to care about how it's looking in the database, so that we can do things like this. So that when we're in our command or in our action or in our controller, whenever you're going to echo this out into a model create or update or whatever that might be, you can just say, get the data object to array method, and that's mapped correctly. So our GitHub owner is actually this owner. GitHub repo is this repo. Personal is this personal. Nice and easy. So that's an array of string mixed. This is also a final class because we don't want that to be replicated. So we can now go to our providers, and in our bindings we can say that this contract, anytime we're trying to inject that, make sure that you actually inject an instance of this instead, so we're good. So nice bindings going on, keeping it clean. I suppose we could, hey Matteo, I suppose we could add a variable, although I'm not 100% sure what it does. It does just to an array, get the instance as an array. I haven't dived too deeply into these template things yet, so I'm not quite 100% on the generics yet. Yeah, any class like this I always add into my bindings. I don't always need it, but it's there if I need it. That's the important thing. So that is my data object. So now I can create a new factory that can be closed. we can come to here and we can say repository factory contract. And the factory, all it needs is a public function make. This is going to get an array of attributes, and it is going to return a repository data object contract. So that array is going to be an array of string mixed, although in reality it's string bool, but I'm going to keep it to mixed in case things change. So let me grab that, which means I can come up to here and create a new class. What are we building today? We are building something that I've called Laracamp, which is a little bit like Basecamp, but not. So here's a repository factory. So it's my version of Basecamp, basically. So let's have a look. We can have name. So we want the string val of data get of attributes name. The owner is going to be owner. The repo is repo. And personal the bool val is there. Okay, nice and clean, nice and easy. If you've ever seen me stream before, you know this is the sort of stuff that I do. This accepts string and mixed. So this is just PHP Storm. This is me just walking through how I'm doing the data modeling, basically. So again, I could probably make this final because I don't want that to be extended. That's final. I could make this final if I really wanted to, but I'm not going to because it's part of Laravel code. It's going to change. It needs to be a bit more flexible in my eyes. These factories, I need to go add these to our bindings now. So we got a data object. And then we're going to add in our repository class from the domain there. Yeah, that should be relatively simple at that point. Yeah, definitely don't do reading the docs. Me and docs don't usually go that well, right? Right, so that is our repository. So now we can move on to our project, which is the next one. So that's what we do. So a make model project, and we want a migration and a factory. What am I doing? I'm not allergic to docs. I just kind of, you know, don't have an affinity for them. So what I'm going to quickly do, I'm going to move this. So I'm going to refactor, move class, domains, project, models. Let's just move that over there. There we go. Off you go. I don't know why that has Snowflake primary. It's snowflakes. Where's that stub? Is that, oh, that's from the old package that I used that didn't really work out for me. So this one didn't work out for me, if I'm completely honest. So I can delete that. add it to the bottom and say use snowflakes, and then we can say that ID is snowflake cast, which I'll grab the name for in a minute. So our ID is snowflake cast, which will be just before that one there as well. There we go. Right, keeps it clean. New eloquent builder. But what we're also going to do is we're going to say new factory, return project factory new, illuminate something or other. The project factory extends factory, which is here. Illuminate database eloquent factories. That one. So what I can probably do is grab that, come to my stub, make sure that we add that. And we'll just get the class here, add that there, and we're good. Yeah, it's so the source. It's just something that I do with a source. What are the benefits of using a string-val data get approach? So, data get is just a Laravel helper to get data from an array or provide a null value in return. So, less kind of visual depth when you're writing it, if you know what I mean. So, it keeps it clean for yourself. So let me just import this. There we go. Then after that, what did you ask? The string val. So you can cast it to a string, but I always get complaints from static analysis or other things. So I just don't. Hey, hey, Gio, how are you doing, buddy? Anybody tuning in? Go check out this guy's channel. It is amazing. He makes me look like I don't know what I'm talking about with PHP. Make sure you go check him out. He is awesome. He's taken it to that next level. So definitely go have a look. Right, where was I? I always get distracted on streams. I'm sorry, everyone. I'm sorry. Right, projects. Right, we have got a name. We've got a snowflake ID. So table string. Let's just add that project name in there. Then we're going to have a description, which is going to be a medium text. And I always use medium text over text because I never know how big they're going to be. You might have something like massive. If a client sends you like a full-on Word doc of a project brief, you could add that as a description. You know, you don't have to add it any other way. Description. However, I do always make description nullable because not everyone wants to bother, right? If it's a personal project, you're never gonna. This feels like an after-work party. I've got Kat and Matteo joining. It's Andreas from work as well in the chat that I saw. Crazy. They're following me. So we're gonna have a create issue. Boolean. Which is gonna have a default of false. So by default, we don't want it to sync with GitHub. That should be something that you're opting into, in my eyes. And then we're going to have a service provider or server provider, table string server provider, which is, Jesus, what is going on with my typing tonight? Server provider, string, booleans. Yeah, we're good. I'm doing great, and I learned a ton of stuff. Oh, thank you very much. It's really fun. You can have a lot of fun with this. You do know where I live. Just check Personio, I suppose. So we need a belongs to, another belongs to, and that is the only relationship. So we did need this, so I can comment that out. Let's just put it back where we want it. And we're going to want two of these. So we're going to have the owner, which is a team, and the repo. So we're going to have a team ID and the repository ID. And that, so if you've ever watched any of my streams before, the way I like to, that's going to annoy me. The way I like to set these up is that the first part of my schema, this is where identifiers are. If I had a UUID, it would be up there too. Then there's a logical gap. And then there's the main attributes. I usually group booleans, so if there's more than one, I will group it. If there's not, I'll keep it as a block. All my typical attributes. At the end is always timestamps, but before the end, that's where I put all of my foreign keys, all of the. So if I'm ever opening up a database, I'm like, okay, so come to database, come to teams. I want to know the user ID. I know exactly where I need to scroll to, and I can go to it and I can look, and I'm there. Organizing your schema, your migrations is just as important. So there we go. Yeah, definitely a more of a mindset approach than an actual, wow, I'm going to learn something useful here. I babble on and get things wrong on my streams, but I'll teach you a nice way to think about doing it right. So we've got a name, we've got a description, we have got a server provider, create issues, we have got a team ID, and we have got a repository ID. So what we're going to have here is create issues. This is going to be a boolean. Then we've got team ID, which is a snowflake cast. I'm just not talking well today, am I? There we go. Yeah, I'm using JetBrains Space. It's kind of cool. It's free to use. Buy JetBrains. Check it out. But you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to turn off. I think I'm on dark mode by default right now because I was doing some light mode, dark mode stuff. So there we go. Might be it's easier on my eyes now. I do apologise. I am a light mode person. Other than terminal, I like to feel like I'm in the Matrix. So my relationships. So public function. Who is the owner of this project? We are going to go for this is a belongs to. So we can return this belongs to. And then related is a team. And the foreign key is the team ID. And anytime I add a new relationship to a model, I always make sure that I click through and add the other one so that I never forget. I never forget to add it. So public function projects have many. Turn this has many. Related is the project model. My foreign key is the project ID. No, team ID. Hey Ali. I'm actually working on multiple monitors, so what I do when I'm streaming is I just use my 24-inch monitor over here because that's what's got my camera on, and it looks like I'm interacting with you a little bit more, but I've actually got the 49-inch monitor over here, and when I'm working not on a stream, I've got my 24-inch monitor is usually reserved for Slack, and then I split this screen in half, so I've got code over here, and if there's a browser over here or a terminal over here, so I've always got dedicated kind of like focus areas. It helps me kind of focus on what I'm doing, and I instinctively know where to look. Basically, really helpful. Really helpful to do that sort of thing. So we've done our project. We have also got a repository, public function. This is a belongs to relation. Return this belongs to, where the related is the repository and the foreign key is repository ID. And yes, I do type hinting and doc blocks still. It's a habit. You do not actually have to. I've just got used to seeing doc blocks, so I just keep doing them, if I'm honest. It has many. So my repository has many projects. Yeah, you could have many projects evolved around a repository. That is possible. You know, depending how you split this up. Like Basecamp, they suggest each project being something about your application itself, and that might be one repository. So that repository could be in lots of different projects at once, basically is what I'm trying to say. So this has many. The related is the project, which is in a different domain, so I need to import that. And then the foreign key is going to be the repository ID. Add that in there. I just look bad with green in my... Yeah, if I delete that, I feel like I've not bothered to do type hinting. I know I've got type hinting, but I still need to see it there, right? I'll get over it one day. Maybe eventually I'll adopt like attributes. But doc block, I mean, it's a habit. We've been using them for years, right? I mean, you can't expect us to drop them in just, you know, one major version. I like them. They're useful. Okay, did I finish doing the factory? I did not. So let's figure out how we're going to fill out this factory. So it will have a name. So this is for a project. So this faker, we're going to do a sentence with 5 words, and we want it as a string. Or variable MB, non-breaking word, I think. Not too sure what that is. Description, we are going to say this faker, we're going to do paragraphs, and we're going to say 6 paragraphs as text. Server provider. I'm going to cheat here. I'm just going to say array random of either forge or ploy, and then create issues is going to be this faker boolean, because I don't care yet, if I'm honest. So then team ID is going to be the team factory, and the repository, I can't type repository. Got it in one. Factory done. So there we go. So now in my migration, or seeder, should I say, sorry, I'm going to swap over to a project instead, and we're going to migrate fresh and seed. So sale artisan migrate fresh and seed. Make sure everything's connecting, and we're good. Everything is created and connected as expected. So now we've got projects, we've got repositories, we've got teams, and we've got users. So we are looking good. We've got everything we would expect. So we can add this to our commit, and we can say data modeling for project. So the next step is obviously to take that one step further and do our domain modeling. So we know that our domain is going to be within here. And we know that if I come to server, no, server, yeah, data objects and factories, that's what I want. Add those empty ones into there. Come down to our project there, it's got them. So let's create our data objects first. I always try to start with the contract first. So this will be a project data object contract. We're looking good. And our data object should have a public function to array, which returns an array. And this is always going to be an array of string, and we're going to say mixed. Realistically, it's like a string bool, but I'm just going to say mixed because it makes more sense right now. So I can grab that and I come back over to my data object, which is a data transfer object in reality. So I can now go to project data done. Mic quality is good. It is a good question. What microphone headset is this? A Corsair Void RGB Elite Premium gaming headset. This is what I use. It's really nice, actually. It's really comfy. I literally wear this all day. Why the roots? Is that just to clean? Yeah, it's literally the dome. If I disable, I'll show you in a second. Actually, it'll be quite useful. What I'm going to do, I'm going to add that array string mixed. I was going to return an empty array for now to stop it complaining. So let me get a warp. So if I just root list quickly, what you can see, I've got OAuth here, right? That's my OAuth domain. It's coming from domains. If I wanted to just turn off a domain, I can come down to my app, come down to where I'm loading in my domain service providers, comment that out, and my domain roots are no longer registered. It keeps it really clean. My service provider registers those those roots for me. It's encapsulated. I can turn it off. I can turn it on. Yeah, it's great. It's a great way to do it, if I'm completely honest. Right, public function construct. So our project itself. Yeah, I don't need to. I'm just in a really bad habit of doing it, to be honest, Dave. It was actually you, David Lindman, who's joined the chat here. He taught me about PHP standard static analysis. So, big ups. If you ever go find his YouTube channel, he's got some great talks on static analysis if you're not used to it. Some really, really good stuff in there. You don't have to. Really don't need to. I mean, I could, in theory, inherit doc, but I like seeing it because I like to see it and understand it. This is more just for my personal use. You don't need DDD for any size project. It helps with certain projects. Larger projects, definitely. No problems, Dave. Right, let me go back to my database for my project so I can understand how this is all split up. So my data object, I'm going to have a string for the name, We're going to have a string for the description. We're going to have a public read-only string for the server provider. We're going to have a read-only boolean for the create issues, and we're not adding in the others. We're going to kind of array merge when we need those. So we're not always going to have these. So this create issues actually needs to come before those, because these are both nullable. Otherwise we will get complaints. If I show you now, if you add that down here and add your default values as you should, we'll get little complaints. Optional parameter is provided before required. So if it's optional, it should be at the end of the chain. Just the way it is. What about the DD implication of its file being in the domain folder? Is mixing? No, it's not mixing application code with domain code. It's I suppose it's kind of, it's very flexible DDD. It's not strict DDD. It's more kind of modularizing, but utilizing domains to do that. You don't have to do it this way. I'm the first person to hold my hand up and say that this is how I like to do it. This isn't how you need to do it at all. And don't just blindly follow what I say as, but Steve said you should do it this way, because that's not always the right way to think of it. Find what works for you. That's my best advice to anybody. Is I'm not always right. I know I'm not always right. I am sometimes. I've got some idea of what I'm doing, and this works for me the way I write code, but it might not work for the way that you write code. So you can follow what I do, but don't feel you have to do it exactly the way that I write my code, because it's probably just going to get in the way for you more than anything, unless you're used to it. Take inspiration from it. You know, take inspiration from how I've wrote this, and find your own path. Find what works for you. What, you know, if you're working in a larger team, find what works for you in your larger team. Use it as a discussion point of, should we approach it like this? And yes, unless we're talking about strict types, you should always declare strict types. Always. And if you're not declaring strict types, why not? Do you want me to just cause havoc? Is that what we're doing these days? So there's our data objects. Next we need a project factory. So we can say project factory contract. Oops. And this is of course an interface. And this has one method. This has a make method which accepts an array of attributes, and it returns a project data object contract. Now this array that's coming in is always going to have a string, and it will always be mixed after that. The likelihood is this is always going to be a string or a boolean, so we could keep it like that, but for now I'm going to keep it mixed. If I'm honest, I keep biting myself in the arse by being too specific in my generic types. Too strict in my generic types, and then extending and then falling over myself. Don't fall over yourself. Don't do as Steve. Learn from my Laracamp talk. Don't make your code too strict all the time. When you're writing it, lower the strictness. Improve the strictness over time. That is how you will solve hours of debugging. It is how you will learn about how you have added things and what you're doing. Also, learn to type, unlike Steve, because apparently my typing skills, oops, stop after 6 p.m. and I always stream after 6 p.m. Nope, wrong one. Nope. Import class. There we go. That's what I wanted. So the name is the string val of data get off of attributes. What I do here, I typically just copy this. So name, then our description, server provider, what's next? Create issues. So this needs to be a bool val. All of those are fine, but these just need reordering. Resort those. And I haven't formatted my code like that in a long time. Things don't have to line up so much anymore, right? That's why IDs and tests. Yes, find those typos. I haven't wrote any tests yet because I'm just doing kind of like data modeling. Tests will come later, trust me. They will be there. I might have time to write some tests tonight actually. I've got about 20 minutes left. So that is our project. So let's go and add that to our provider. Here's our data objects and factory to create those data objects. Import the domain, and there we go. So they're bound. That's bound to the container, and that is our project done. So what I will do is I will git add, git commit, domain modeling for project. I'm just going to push that quick. So, I mean, we don't want to just domain model, right? That's not what we want to do all night. So let's take an example. I probably don't have all the time in the world to do a lookup on GitHub and that sort of stuff, which just made me have a thought actually. Does repository not belong in version control? I think it might do. I think I might need to move this class to a new domain because it actually should belong to version control. Let's just bulk refactor that one. Factories, repository factory. And let's refactor and move that class to version control. Let's do that refactor, data objects. I'm going to refactor and move that class also to version control. Providers, nothing needed yet. Nothing in the roots yet, that's fine. This is where we need it. So we're going to have the, also need to come over here, don't I? Team, data objects, refactor, move class from team to version control. And our factory as well. Refactor, move class to version control, refactor, and we're done. We're good. So, repository factory. This is a version control service provider because now I've done it in the right place. Version control, perfect. And the implementation. Version control. And there we go. That is the factory, and now just for the data object itself, which I usually do first, but I didn't this time. Let's just import that. Version control, sanity check, version control, we're good. That has now been moved, perfect. So now I can git add, git commit, moving things between domains. Yeah, I really need to figure out PHP Storm a little bit better, if I'm honest. I've not really dug into it enough. So yeah, as I was saying, I'm gonna leave the GitHub integration for another time, because that's something that I could probably spend an entire stream going through. Let's have a look at something like creating a project, maybe. That might be quite useful. And then at another time we'll come back and we'll start looking at adding commands, for example. So, tests. Oh. Right, so let's create a new command. Some people say this is more CQRS than DDD. I'm not using a command bus, so it's just a naming implementation. I'm calling it a command and a query. So it leaves me open in case I want to adopt CQRS more than anything. So in my project command, if I look in here, we've got a GitHub login command. What is this command going to be? Control Shift and A or equivalent, search for align named arguments done. Control Shift and A. No, Command Shift A. Align named arguments. Cool. Thanks for that, Andreas. You know so much about PHP Storm. I'm going to have to pick your brain some more. Right, what is this? What do I want this to be called? It's creating a project, right? So it's basically, it needs to be, if I'm honest, I need to create the contract first. So let's go to here, commands. We're going to create a new PHP interface. And we're going to call this create project command interface go. This is going to have a public function handle. It is going to accept the project data object contract as its object, and it will return a model or null, basically. It will return an eloquent model or it will return nothing. So create project command. Create project contract. Cancel. What am I doing? There we go. There we go. So now up in our commands, I create a new class called create project. Implement that. We can simplify this. So we accept this in. So we can say when we are creating a new project, we can say that the project model, we want to start a query and we want to basically just create. We're going to do a lot of validation before we hit this, so we're pretty good. Object to array. Done. Now this isn't going to be perfect because what we aren't taking into account here that we also need to pass through from the project the team and that repository as well. So if we come back to here, we can drop all this down. We're going to have an integer for the team and an integer for the repository, like that. So again, drop this down. We've got an integer for the team and an integer for the repository. Make them match, which is fine, which means we can now grab this and we can say array merge. And the two arrays that we're going to merge are going to be the object that we are passing through, and a second one, which is going to have team ID as team and the repository ID as repository. So we're passing it as an argument, so we're just going to merge those two arrays together and it will achieve the same thing. And it's nice, it's clean, it's encapsulated, and it's just beautiful. So now in our provider, not our OAuth one, our project provider, we can now bind these, import that class, import that class. Yeah, no problems, Craig. You enjoy. Hope the little one goes down to sleep nicely for you. So, roots. We can say root. Get the root facade in here. We are going to prefix all of these roots with projects as projects. But also, we need to make sure we add the middleware of web. Otherwise, we won't get sessions and stuff, which is kind of vital for what we're trying to do here. And this is a static function, and it is going to return nothing. So it's return void. So here are our projects. The first thing we want to do is to be able to create one. Now usually I'd add an index root first, so I'll just leave a gap for that. So I'm going to have a post root to projects. We're going to name this store, so projects store. So we need to create a controller for this. So domain project, we haven't got a HTTP yet, so we can create that. We can go and create a controller within here. And if you look in how we've done it in here, standard logout controller, nice and clean, nice and simple. We don't need to embed them in any way, so we can do like a store project controller. Store project controller, which means we can say public function invoke that accepts the request. So in here we can say domains project HTTP controllers store project controller class. Done. That root is registered. Root list. Post projects. It is there because our service provider is registering that root for us. So this can be validated. We can create requests for this. I can never remember the proper naming. So make request, test, request. I always create a test one because I can never remember what I meant to extend. Form request, there we go. So down in here I can create a store request. Form request. So what do we need within here? We need whether it's going to be authorized or not, right? Yep. We want people to be able to do this action for now. And then we're going to have our rules. What's going to be our validation rules for this? So, name is required. It's got to be a string. We're going to set it a minimum of 2. And we're going to set it a maximum of 255 because it's a string. Description. Well, this is nullable because it's not required. But if it is there, it's got to be a string. And we're going to set that. Well, we're not going to set a minimum on that. Doesn't make sense to. Create issues. This is required and must be Boolean. Server provider. No, what am I doing? Server provider is nullable. So again, make that nullable, and we'll make it a string. Eventually, we'll do something like rule in make an enum for it or something like that. You know, something. Well, I think there's like a enum rule that you can use. Eventually, we'll move that out, but for now, we'll keep it as it is. Server provider, create issues. Yep. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. There's the main things. We're good. We are good. We are good. We like adding present for nullable rules. I don't. I'm not a fan of that actually. Here's my store request. I don't know why. I changed my mind. Always happy to change my mind for these things. So there's my store request. Oh, what's up, wife want? 8 minutes ago. 6-second voice message. Can't be important because she hasn't called. So we don't need that anymore, which is great. We can push that off. We can say, okay, so we're also going to want the factory. We know we're going to need the factory. So let's resolve that. We're also going to want the command as well. So let's resolve that out as well. So, okay, so this is a store request. We've already validated at this point. So what else do we want to do? Well, we want to say command, handle the command. The object I want to pass through is using the factory. We want to make the attributes that I want to get are going to be array, no, not array emoji at this point, request validated, because the team needs to be something and the repository needs to be something. So when we're creating a project, do we always want a repository? We're always going to want a team, but we're not always going to want a repository. So that means that this is fine. this is not. Because this needs to be a nullable integer. So that the commands match. There we go. So that'll just pass through null, which is fine, but we're always going to need the team. So yeah, just preference. It allows me to extend into CQRS without too much refactoring. That's the main reason. What I tend to do if I start passing arguments in through the request, I then have to start looking at this, basically pushing this up to the constructor. Otherwise I start getting issues with things not adding, basically. We're not gonna. Do we want a repository? I suppose we could say like request get repository and pass that to as an ID if it's already linked, and then this could just be like team ID. Yeah, it's a good argument actually, Andreas. I've not toyed with it. It's definitely something that I might look at. Sorry, 2 seconds. Public. Nope, don't need to be public. We can create these private read-onlys. Private and read-only. Import that team. That is looking good. We can actually make that a final class if we really wanted to. I mean, it's a controller. So, sale, artisan, IDE. Let's just write those quickly and see if we can get rid of that. Team. Ah, it's not going to work because it's in a domain directory. Darn it. I'll have to look at how I can extend or fix that. Like some config for it or something. Like the IDE helper. I'll look another time. Not important for this stream. Definitely not important for this stream. So there's our store project controller, which is just going to take a command, handle it, passing through the validated data, passing through the ID of a team that we're trying to create a project on, and if that is null, then we'll probably do something like auth user current team ID, something like that. But I'm trying to avoid like these potentially messy approaches. So let's see how this works, because that'll just pass null otherwise, which is great. Yeah, I've still got a little bit of time, I guess. Once that has been created, this should return a project, that command, which would allow me to return a redirect to a root. What's important there? That's fine. Then my redirect response, and the root takes an argument of root, which is going to be projects show. the next argument is going to be the parameters, which would be team, team ID, and project would be project ID. There we go. So we're basically just going to set our command to handle it, passing through the factory with the validated data, passing through the team and the repository, then redirect to a route called projects show, which is not created yet, I am aware. We can very quickly resolve that. By adding in this. And within here, we can create a quick show controller. Invoke. This accepts a request. It accepts a team and a project. So in my route down here, I kind of need to wrap all of these, but I don't want to. I mean, I could like team ID like that, projects team ID, no, it feels messy. I'll think of a way around that in a bit. Maybe I won't pass a team. That's the only way I can think of doing this right now. Yeah, we just won't pass a team. We'll keep it isolated because we want to still want to be able to turn on and off things. For now, anyway. So as our show controller, we're not going to have a team. It's going to go view a project, and we'll handle authorization differently. Right, so that is the start, basically. We've got our models, we've got routes, how we're going to use these routes. We just add this show controller. They're relatively straightforward, they're relatively simple. There's no testing yet, we're going to add testing next time. But we're binding all of the contracts so we're nice and we can pull it from the container where we need it. Got our requests, everything's all nicely encapsulated. We're just using the app. We're barely using our app, to be honest, right now. Using our app for the sake of having an app. I'd usually keep my HTTP within here, but I'm playing around with this different idea. I might refactor it back, I might not, we'll see. Like I said, find ways that work for you, basically. So for now, I'm going to get the git status, I'm going to add all of these. Creating projects and a few test routes. So, yeah, I'm going to call it a night at that one. I think that's pretty fun. We've still got quite a lot to do, even in terms of modelling and data modelling. I'll try and do some in my spare time afterwards. But for now, I'm going to call it a night. Thank you very much for tuning in. If you like this, make sure to give it a thumbs up, drop a comment. If you want to see more, subscribe. In the description below, there is a link to my Discord. Feel free to join. Feel free to ask me questions. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. I'm not streaming again this week. I won't be streaming again until Tuesday next week. I'm trying to just do once a week right now. I'll spend a little bit more time with the family. I kind of been neglecting them and spending too much time streaming and doing this sort of stuff for a while. It'll be nice to spend a little bit extra time with my family. So on that note, I am going to go see them. I'm going to see my wife and daughter, who are probably the only ones awake right now, and going to go chill. So thank you very much. I will see you all next week. Have a good evening. Stay safe. Stay happy. And good night. Thank you.